What is up, everybody? Welcome into the show. You're watching the San Francisco 49ers Report. Chase Senior here with you, and we are emanating live once again from the NFL Combine in Indianapolis. And coming up on today's show, Niner fans, you know how I feel about this, but you're not going to like this. It seems as though the 49ers as an organization are content with their offensive line, and they don't see a need to improve it. I think this is absolutely crazy. And we're going to talk about that coming up. So everything that we're getting to here on the show, we'll discuss the overall Niners offensive philosophy as an organization led by Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch, how it's cost them in some really big games, what John Lynch had to say, which is leading to me doing this show right now. Brett Coleman is going to join the show as a guest. John Middlekauff going to join the show as a guest as well. And let's just begin here. The 49ers offensive line philosophy is one that I think is old. It should be thrown in the trash can. It's one that they should move on from. But they value skill position players over offensive linemen. They have talked about this as an organization. Kyle Shanahan has, and isn't this crazy as well? Even their own offensive line coach and Chris Forster has talked about this, how the Niners early in the draft specifically like to draft players who are skill position guys who can score touchdowns as compared to offensive linemen. This is not how great general managers right now in the National Football League and over the course of NFL history have built their teams. There is that saying where elite GMs like to prioritize the trenches and they like to build their teams inside out. What they mean by that is loading up along the offensive line and the defensive line, and then building out the roster to the fringes from there. Now, to the 49ers' credit as an organization, since John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan took over this Niners operation in 2017, they have prioritized one side of the line of scrimmage. That's the defensive line, not the offensive line. But when I watch the game of football, sometimes you have to watch the game from the sideline, right? Which team is getting that push? Is it the offensive line on the field? Is it the defensive line on the field? And so often over the last few years for the 49ers, when their offensive line goes up against some of these top-tier defenses in the NFL, it's their offensive line that is getting pushed back. So to the Niners' detriment, I just don't think they emphasize the offensive line enough. And for all of you nerds out there, look, I talk analytics here on the show from time to time. I believe that it's best to have a blend of both. Eye test, a little bit of a gut feel. You got to look at some overall stats, some deep dive numbers, and some analytics as well. But don't hit me and don't cross me with some of these analytical offensive line numbers. You have to turn on the tape. And what's crazy about how the Niners are approaching potentially this offseason in the trenches on the offensive side of the ball, was that Seahawks loss in Week 18 not enough to open up your eyes as an organization? How about the divisional round loss against the Seattle Seahawks? This Niners offensive line against the Super Bowl champion Seattle Seahawks defensive line got their asses kicked time and time again. And when the Niners over the years have played elite defenses across the National Football League, their offensive line has always struggled. Just look at what transpired this year in 2025. Houston Texans, maybe the better defense as compared to Seattle, whooped the Niners up front. Seattle Seahawks, Week 18 divisional round, dominated the Niners in the trenches. And so John Lynch joined Jennifer Lee Chan of NBC Sports Bay Area, who is a few tables over from us, and she was talking to John Lynch, and she said there's this perception outside of the building that this offensive line isn't good enough. What do you think about that? And John Lynch defended his offensive line. He said, quote, "There are guys, and we love them, and we don't let that noise affect us, and I think our players do a good job. We have Trent Williams, who will go down as one of the greatest tackles to ever play the game. Colton McKivitz, can't say enough about him. He is rewarded, or was rewarded, because he earned that contract last year. Jake Brendel played really good football. Dominic Pooney, a really good find for us in the NFL draft. Really solid football player." Are you kidding me? For the ladies and the gentlemen out there, I want you to find somebody who loves you like the Niners love center Jake Brendel. I don't understand the Niners love fest with Jake Brendel. Is he a good scheme fit? Yes. Is he very smart and cerebral pre-snap? Yes. Is he a good run-blocking center? No doubt about it. But in pass pro, he really struggles. And when the opposition is able to get consistent pressure from the interior, and those interior defensive linemen are able to muddy up the pocket, what does it lead to? Brock Purdy running for his life. And what doesn't make sense to me at all is that the Niners just gave Brock Purdy a contract worth $55 million in average annual value. Don't you want to keep your star quarterback upright who has an injury history? But when he is getting pressured from the inside, he has no chance. Look at these numbers here to my right. Jake Brendel pressures by season and where he ranks among all centers in the National Football League. 2023, he gave up 29 pressures, 30th in the NFL. 2024, 26 pressures, 37th in the NFL. That's not even starting caliber. 2025, 23 pressures, 31st in the NFL. Are those numbers good enough, John Lynch? Kyle Shanahan, prior to the divisional round game against Seattle, called Jake Brendel one of the best centers in the National Football League. Well, you look at the numbers, you turn on the tape, you're lying to all of us. And if you actually think that is true, that's insane. Is Jake Brendel a solid run blocker? I will give him that. He does a good job of pulling out in space, and he does a good job of blocking in this outside zone scheme. But when he has to go up against the likes of some of the better defensive tackles in the National Football League, he's getting pushed into the lap of Brock Purdy. And how many times does he end up on the ground? Often. So you think about the Seattle Seahawks here. This is a team that, yes, won the Super Bowl. But this is a team that will continue to have the same organizational philosophy led by John Schneider, who right now is running laps around John Lynch, and Mike McDonald, who has outcoached Kyle Shanahan to the point where in 8 quarters to end the year, in 2 matchups against the Seahawks, the Niners did not score a touchdown once. And what was the constant, consistent theme in those last 2 games? The Niners were getting bullied up front. They couldn't run block. They couldn't pass protect. And when we were talking to John Lynch the other day here in Indy at the NFL Combine, and he was asked about the number one focus for this team in the offseason, what did he say? He said, our defensive line. Now, that is certainly a need as well. The Niners were dead last in the NFL in sacks last year. You are getting back Mykel Williams. You're getting back Nick Bosa. That's going to help the defense. Fred Warner as well. But the offensive line should be the number one focus for this football team. I feel like I'm taking crazy pills here. Now, AP, this is Middlekauff. Let's cue up Brett Coleman for the clip that we're about to show you here, because as I mentioned off the rip, Brett Coleman, one of the NFL YouTuber, content creator OGs on this platform, John Middlekauff, joining the show. So I caught up with Brett Coleman yesterday here in Indy, and we talked about this offensive line, and notice what he says. He says, you can make the argument that 80% of the Niners offensive line this offseason should be replaced. And when he was talking about the interior, I think his reaction said it all.
They're not that far off personnel-wise. They didn't win 12 games on accident. The key thing is offensive line, offensive line, offensive line. I'm really not that worried about the defense. I know a lot of Niners fans are. I'm really more worried about the offensive line. And that was before the Trent news, right? Still need to figure out right tackle. Still need to figure out left tackle the future, because even if you bring back Trent, he's 38, right? So you still need to have an answer in the future. The interior trio, my God, like, you could argue 80% of their offensive line should be new this year. And there's only so many picks to work with and only so much money to work with. And, oh, by the way, George is coming off an Achilles. So that's really where I'm more concerned. They got to figure out tight end. They got to figure out offensive line. They got to hope Christian can give them just one more healthy season. And, you know, at receiver, I think they're fine. Again, it depends on Ricky staying healthy, but like if I'm them, honestly, I think I throw 1 pick at pass rusher, and every other pick is offensive line and tight end.
Again, you notice his reaction when talking about the Niners' interior offensive line. It was a, oof, they're not good enough. And something else that Brett Coleman had said, and this whole video is up on my X page, at @Chase_Senior. Give me a follow over there. He said, as long as the gap between the Niners' interior offensive line talent and the Seahawks' defensive line talent is as great as it is, the 49ers will continue to struggle. Now, next here, I want to get to a portion of our interview with John Middlekauff, host of the 3 and Out podcast, Netflix star. He's out here at the NFL Combine. sitting down with John Schneider, Howie Roseman, dapping up Ben Johnson. His podcast is under Colin Cowherd's The Volume Podcast Network. And this is a longer clip here, but we both are in agreement that the 49ers offensive line philosophy really just doesn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah, I mean, the Seattle is a bad matchup because all their D linemen can rush. That's why the Eagles are kind of a bad matchup. All their especially a couple years ago, their defensive line, besides Trent, like all their defensive linemen, you can't block any of them. So the 49ers are never going to have like 5 Trent Williams. Like you said, they don't really. Kyle's even talked. We like skill guys over that.
Yep. Early in the draft.
Forrester says we would take a skill guy over that. Their O-line coach said that. Andy Reid, Jim Harbaugh would be like, "What are you guys talking about?
Howie would never.
What are we doing?
Yeah.
Like, is there a bigger
Ozzie
lock?
Newsome would never.
Is there a bigger lock this year than Howie to take an offensive lineman in the first round? I
Yeah.
mean, it's just like 2 of his first 3 picks to be offensive linemen. So I just listen. I disagree with that strategy. I think Kyle would say, "Well, look at my record." It's true, but I do think on the margins it has shown up in some big spots. Like obviously Chris Jones is a great player, but when you have like random guys playing some of these positions, not everyone can be a Pro Bowler. But at least when you invest, people can go, well, they really tried to invest in that spot. So it's going to be tough. I mean, how many guys is Seattle going to lose? Like, isn't their whole team kind of coming back? You know, and they're going to have a ton of momentum. They're going to be free. The Rams are really good. The NFC is really good. You know,
Deep conference.
Yeah, the North. I mean, I don't think they had a team. They all went 9-8 or better. People look at Lions, Vikings suck. They went 9-8. Like they weren't like They weren't the Cardinals. You know, the Giants are clearly going to be more solid with John. The Eagles are solid. The Cowboys, they just get a couple defensive players. They got a good offense, so that they're going to be pretty good. Commanders were in the NFC Championship a couple years. Like, they're just good. The Saints were kind of coming on. Falcons have a bunch of talent. Like, the NFC is just a hard conference.
Look, and I know that Niner fans don't like Eagle fans and vice versa, and this has ended up being a big rivalry in the NFL. But what did John say there? Is there a bigger lock than Howie Roseman drafting an offensive lineman early in the 2026 draft at the end of April? It's a huge lock. And I know that some Niner fans might say, well, the Niners beat the Eagles in 2023, beat the Eagles in the wild card round. What have the Eagles done 2 times since 2017 that the Niners haven't done since 1994? Win 2 Super Bowls. And you think about how the Niners offensive line has cost them in some massive games. 2021 NFC Championship game. Aaron Donald literally ended the game because he broke through the line of scrimmage and got to Jimmy Garoppolo, resulted in a pick, which ended the game. Rams go to the Super Bowl. 2022, that Eagles team had 70 sacks that year. Number 1 in the NFL. 15 more than any team. Brock Purdy's elbow was crunched. Game over after that. I know it was Tyler Kroft who was out there, but the Eagles defensive line dominated the offensive line for the Niners that day. You think about what happened against the Kansas City Chiefs in 2023. Chris Jones goes unblocked because the Niners had a replacement-level player at guard who had the wrong assignment and didn't even block Chris Jones, one of the best players in the history of the National Football League. That's what happens when you don't draft players who are good enough along the offensive line. You want to know why this Niners run game hasn't been as good the last 2 years? Because they're not good enough up front. Feel like I'm taking crazy pills here. I'm making some homies here at Chat Sports laugh because I'm ranting here on the show because this is insane. I'm going to continue to hold this team accountable. I'm going to keep it a buck, keep it 100 here on the show. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button here on the 49ers Report for daily and year-round coverage of SAN-FRAN-CISCO. And I'll catch you soon. Peace.